Good, Debbie. We are in Genesis chapter 18. I was just explaining that I am recording, but it's not on Facebook. I'm recording it because I need to load it to YouTube for Carolyn because she listens to our recording there, and it's not saving on Facebook right now. So anyway, so we are recording, but it's not a Facebook Live. Today we are in Genesis chapter 18, and I feel like what we talked about, what I mentioned in the announcement this morning is so true. As we were reading through this, we're going, ooh. You know, if you haven't read the Old Testament as an adult, there's a lot of things you may have missed when you went through it as a child in Sunday school. So today we're going to talk about some things that are interesting. So I have a chart I want to show you, and remember when we were talking about how much of the Old Testament was written based on an oral tradition, and we talked about that there's a pattern to the words. I'm sorry, let me get here. This is chart 6. And we talked about, I explained how one of the evidences of the oral tradition is the structure of Genesis. And also remember that the people were alive at the same time. So, you know, for example, Noah might be alive at the same time as Abraham. The patriarchs were, you know, living so long, many of them were alive at the same time periods. So this is an example of the structure, and we have the same structure. I have the same chart for all of Genesis. And right now we're in the story of Abraham. So here's the pattern for Abraham. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, F prime, E prime, D prime. It's the repeat. So the genealogy of Terah, we end with the genealogy of Nahor. B is promise of a son, Abraham's odyssey begins. Birth of the son, Abraham's odyssey ends. You see how it goes? It's this pattern. And so what would happen is if a person were memorizing this, they would be able to follow the pattern, and they would be able to go down and see that, oh, it's this, and then I back it out. Bump, back it back out when you tell the story. Okay? It's an interesting structure. It repeats again and again, and it just happens since where we are right now is here in the area of the, here. Abraham intercedes for Lot in prayer. This is the backing out of the passage. Okay? Just wanted to show you that. And then here we have a map that we're going to use in a little bit. So. Okay, so in Genesis chapter 18, we are still reading about Abraham, and we are actually beginning to turn the corner of Abraham. But he's already been given the promise, but he has no baby yet. Okay, so in chapter 18, starting at verse 1, we're going to read at least the first 2 words. The Lord. Stop right there. And the reason I'm stopping is because the word Lord is, if some translations, they will put, when the word is Jehovah, Yahweh, the name of God, they will use all capitals. Hey, Julia, welcome. They will use all caps. So look at yours. Does yours have all caps for Lord? Mm-hmm. Does yours have all caps for Lord?
Yes.
Yes? No? There's one that does not. Here's one that does not.
Yes, it does.
So.
Yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is all caps.
Oh, is it like small letter caps?
Yeah.
Like it makes a capital L and it's a capital O, but it's kind of shorter?
Yeah.
That's all caps.
Well, not all of them do. I thought maybe we might have a few that don't. But I'm drawing your attention to it because in the front of your Bible, there's an introduction that describes these kinds of things that the people who translated the scripture do. And it'll say things like, if it's the word Yahweh, which is the name of God, instead of writing Lord, we write Lord with all caps to indicate it's that word. Whereas if it's Elohim, well, we do this. Elohim is the almighty, powerful God, but it's not the name of God. Do you see what I mean? So they in the front of your Bible, there's like a thing that talks about how your Bible was translated, kind of an introduction. So sometime when you're bored in church, read your thing there. Yeah, that's what I do. Whenever something is like an old topic or something I'm not really into, I'll go back and reread that front introduction part to remind myself of the ways that the scripture was translated when they translated it. And if you have a red letter edition, did you think that Jesus spoke in red? No, some guy decided those words were Jesus' words. The guy's reading the script, right? That was reading it, decides what they think were Jesus' words. So if you remember in Revelation, we even found a place where we kind of felt there might be a little discrepancy in that. And we included some words as read that weren't read. And so it happens every once in a while because people are interpreting it depending on how you read it. There's slight little subtle differences. So in this case, this is very important because do you remember the story of the angels who visited Abraham? I remember it. 3 angels came to visit Abraham. But wait a minute, what did we just read? What does it say? The Lord appeared to Abraham. Is the Lord an angel? No. This is Yahweh. This is the name of God here. It says that Yahweh came. It doesn't say a great being, a shiny messenger. The actual word is the name of God. This isn't even Elohim, which would be like a more general term of God's might and power. This is specifically God's name that came. So when we see this in verse 1, this is Jehovah, Yahweh, the personal name of God. So here it says in chapter 18, the Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Which, if you're living in a tent, I would imagine the heat of the day, it would be good to be sitting there. Where's Mamre? You don't have to answer. I'm going to tell you if I can make sure I can see. So this area of Mamre, here's a picture of Mamre. It's very near Hebron. See, just very close to Hebron. So that's where he's at. And he was sitting under a tree. So, guess what I have here? How about this for fun? The Oak of Mamre on the grounds of the Russian Orthodox Monastery of the Holy Trinity in Hebron. Tradition claims it is 5,000 years old, and it is the very tree under which Abraham sat. Yeah, who knows, right? But it's interesting. So they actually think that's the tree. It looks like it's not really doing so very well, would you say? But after 5,000 years, I guess, it would be rough to be doing well as a tree. But that's what he was doing, sitting under the tree in Mamre. And Mamre is very close to Hebron. And the reason that that's important is because Hebron is a city we can see more clearly on the maps. And so when we look at the area, let me go here to, I want to go to Sodom and Gomorrah. I have it. Here it is. We're going to be looking today at this area. And so you can see this is Hebron. And so the place he's sitting under the tree is just to the north of that in this hill country here. And here's Sodom and Gomorrah, this area. And when Lot first split with Abraham, he came out to this region here, this hilly country here right along the sea. And then we see here in this chapter that he ends up settling in Sodom. So if you were in Hebron, I was told by a guy who visited that area, he said that it's almost like if you were going to Las Vegas and you were in those hills before you get to Vegas, and you're kind of driving down and you're looking, you can see Vegas. You're on the hills surrounding. You're quite a distance away still. You've still got a ways to go, So that's the way this is. Hebron is kind of up higher, still desert, a little away from Sodom, but they would have been able to see Sodom, at least the city the fires, the smoke. You would see the city basically from this area. It wasn't that far away. So if we go back to chapter 18, starting at verse 3. Well, let's go back to verse 2. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by." What's that Lord look like? Is that Yahweh? No, that's all lower letters. That means respectable person that seems important, right? "Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can be refreshed, and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered, "do as you say." Okay, so what's their names? In Eastern culture, you're not supposed to ask. Apparently, it's a big no-no to be asking who somebody is before you offer them hospitality. The rule is you're supposed to offer them the hospitality, and then later, after they've eaten and rested a little while, you have this very informal introduction thing that happens. But the culture is that you offer them a place, you offer them food, you are very hospitable. We see it several times in the Old Testament. We see this happening, and it never really occurs to us that they haven't even introduced everybody yet. What's the first thing we do? "Hi, my name's Laura." We introduce ourselves. But in this culture, the first thing you do is you offer hospitality. If you want to learn more about that, there are a lot of really good, you can just Google it, Eastern culture, because it's still true. There's a lot of those practices of offering food and refreshment that continue to be true. It's a hospitality culture. And you don't bring out if I picked up an indigent, which I wouldn't pick them up in the first place, right? I'm not gonna pick up somebody that's, traveling along the side of the road, because I've been taught so long that that's dangerous. I'm a woman, I'm not supposed to do that. So in my culture, I wouldn't be bringing home someone who's a homeless person to my house, okay? But let's pretend that I did. What would be the first thing I would say? "What's your name?" "My name's Laura," right? And then when I got to my house, would I get the frozen turkey out of my freezer and bake it up with some stuffing and mashed potatoes? Maybe. Is that what I would do? I'd look in the fridge and say, "Well, I got some leftover goulash here. We'll have some of that. Or here's some bread and bologna. Let's have a bologna sandwich today." I would, whatever I had. That's not this culture. This culture, you do your best. Look what Abraham provides. He doesn't even know the names of these guys yet. So Abraham hurried into the tent. "Sarah, quick," he said, "get 3 seahs of fine flour and knead it and bake some bread." Okay. Not tortillas. and even if it was tortillas, I'd be put out. I don't know how Sarah feels about the whole thing, but I can imagine how she feels about it. Because he says, "Get your fine flour, knead it, and bake some bread." Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk. By the way, in current culture over there, you don't mix curds and milk with meat. I don't know why. And the calf that had been prepared, and set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. He's not even sitting down eating with them. He's serving them. So he's being their servant. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked. Now, how do they know his wife and that her name is Sarah? "They're in the tent," he said. Then the Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Abraham knows that that is God. That's Yahweh speaking. Verse 10, "Then the Lord, Yahweh, said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Remember this moment in time, because 2 chapters from now, Abraham passes his wife off as his sister again. Can you believe that? I was so mad at him when I saw that he did it again. But anyway, so This is supposed to be 1 year from this point in time, this time of Sodom and Gomorrah and all that's going to happen, because you've read the story before. This all that's going to happen in 1 year. Isaac's going to be there, be born. So is she pregnant now? No. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already old and well advanced in years, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I'm worn out and my master is old, I will now have this pleasure. Right? That's what she's thinking. Did she say it? No, she was thinking it. Verse 13. Then the Lord, notice Yahweh, said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I'm old? What just happened inside Sarah? That look, that. How did he know how did he know my thoughts? Is anything too hard for Yahweh? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, I didn't laugh. But he said, yes, you did laugh. Verse 16. When the men got up to leave, they looked down towards Sodom. Remember where we are then. They're here. They're getting ready to leave, and they look down towards Sodom. And Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. Then Jehovah, Yahweh, said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on the earth will be blessed through him, for I have chosen him, so that he will direct his children, his household after him, to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. So the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised. God is saying this. Jehovah God is saying this. So what he's saying is, go ahead, what? Pardon?
Who is he saying it to?
Abraham. It says to Abraham. It says, he's hiding. He's like talking out loud. Shall I hide this from Abraham? What am I about to do? Abraham will surely become a great, powerful nation. He's saying, this is what God is thinking. Now, you say, why is he thinking this? We have this recorded for a reason. Why is this recorded? We're learning about Abraham and how he becomes the father of a great nation. This is one of Abraham's lessons. God decides to tell Abraham because this is the lesson for Abraham. So God's like thinking to himself, should I tell him or not tell him?
It's just weird they said it in third person.
Right. Saying, should I tell him or not tell him? But why does he say to choose to do it? For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children, his household. What's about to happen in Sodom and Gomorrah? You know the general story, right? Generally, where Sodom, was it nice in Sodom? Good place to live? No, bad place. Evil, right? We know this argument over the number of righteous that will be excused, right? So it's all about righteousness. And God is saying, why am I going to talk to Abraham about this? Because he needs to learn about justice and righteousness, because he's going to be the father of this great nation. So go back here to verse 20. Then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. The men turned away and went towards Sodom. Oh, I'm sorry, the men hadn't turned away yet, so he could be talking to them. Because the angels hadn't turned away yet. I was thinking they had already gone. But Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Then Abraham approached him and said, will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people? So, do you think that you have the guts to reason with God? I don't know if I would.
I feel like if your heart is in the right place, I mean, I think that maybe he really thought there was going to be someone worth saving, you know?
Who's in Sodom?
His wife.
Lot, his wife, 2 daughters, and 2 engaged guys to the daughters. So there are at least 6 in his family. And what is the mark that God gives for righteous? He's asking, what about if there's 50 righteous? Now, the problem for Abraham is how many of Lot's family are righteous?
Yeah.
Lot might have been worried about that, right? We don't know that. But Abraham begins asking these questions. Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you, will not the judge of all the earth do right? So what's Abraham dealing with? How many righteous, how many sinners, and what gets the punishment, right? Which is something important for Abraham to think about, because in 2 more chapters, he passes his wife off as his sister again. You'd think he'd learn, right? But no, he's just like us, right? He's fallible just like us. Verse 26. The Lord said, if I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake. Then Abraham spoke up again, now that I've been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of the righteous is 5 less than 50? Will you destroy the whole city because of 5 people? What if it's just 5 less than 50? 5 less. How many people are in Lot's family? 6. Do you see how he's asking it? If I find 45 there, he said, I will not destroy. Once again, he spoke to him, what if only 40 are found? Another increment of 5s. He said, for the sake of 40, I will not do it. Then he said, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. What if only 30 can be found there? And he answered, I will not do it if I find 30. Abraham said, now that I have been so bold as to speak, Lord, what if only 20 can be found there? He said, for the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. Then he said, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there? He answered, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham returned home. Now, you know Sodom and Gomorrah is going to get destroyed, right? You know from whenever you were a kid and you read the story, it's going to be Lot, his wife, and the 2 daughters. The 2 sons-in-law don't go. Did the city get destroyed? But what happened to the 4? They were taken out before destruction, right? They had the opportunity to come out of it. So this reasoning that Abraham did with God is teaching Abraham that God is going to rescue the righteous, that his destruction is for the wicked. Now back in Matthew 24 and also in Luke 17, we get in Matthew 24, if you want to write it down for later, it's verses 37 to 39, and Luke 17, verses 26 to 28. Those are the passages that say that when Christ comes again, the times will be like, it'll be like this time of Sodom and Gomorrah, and also the time that the people went into the ark, that Noah and his family went into the ark. Many say that this is the part that pertains to that, this righteousness, that God is going to rescue his people before the destruction happens, just like in the time of Lot. And that in the time of Noah, people were sinning and doing all their things right up until the day that God shut the door. Who shut the door? God shut the door. Noah didn't shut the door. God shut the door. There comes a point, now those people who were in the town where Noah lived and the people in Sodom, what was the difference between the moment before and the moment after? Nothing, except God's judgment. They had no warning, they had no understanding or knowledge that the city was going to be destroyed. Do you see what I mean? It came on like this. So when is the time to repent of your sin? That is the message we have for unbelievers. That's what gives our urgency for bringing people into Christ, is that urgency. We know that God has provided escape for the righteous. He has. I'm hoping to go in the first rendition. I'm all for a pre-trib rapture. I'm for that exit. The first exit, I'd like to be out of here then. We'll see what actually happens. But if it's a pre-trib rapture, I'm out of here, right? That's the kind of thing that would be this pattern where God removes the righteous. He allowed Lot to leave the city. But even Lot had no real understanding about what was going to happen. All he knew is these angels kept saying, come on, we got to get out of here. He didn't really understand the difference between this minute and the next minute when it was all destroyed. So, chapter 19. The two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. Now, the fact that he's in the gateway means that he is a prominent man. You would sit in the gateway because you were a businessman, and because you were a businessman and had wealth or whatever, you were considered prominent and your decisions were important. So he probably was not a public official, but he was very prominent and one of the decision makers. You would sit at the gate, you would hire people, you would welcome visitors, that kind of thing. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. So he recognized them somehow as being very important, because why would he put his face to the ground? My lords, notice small letters, so they looked regal to him, like important people. He said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way early in the morning. Notice he didn't ask their name. Why does he want them at his house? Probably because they looked important. They looked like people he might want to do business with. Who knows? They were prominent. They looked good enough for him to bow down to. Yeah, impress the neighbors. He's one of the leaders of the town. That would be a very prominent thing, to go and get this prominent people to come to your house, right? You'd be looking good. It's not like you're getting the itinerant off of the street. Different story, right? These guys looked important. No, they answered, we will spend the night in the square. But he insisted. Why would Lot insist? He knows. So strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. At least they got to do it without yeast. Poor Sarah had to make regular bread. Verse 4, before they had gone to bed, all of the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them. You're really getting a measure of the city, aren't you, with that? Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him. So what's he doing? He's putting himself at risk, but he's probably not at much risk because he's a prominent person in the town, right? So he steps outside the door, but he makes sure to close it behind him to protect his visitors. And said, no, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. That made me so mad. The first time I read that, I just couldn't believe that. I lost all respect for Lot. I don't know if it's because I'm one of 4 girls in my family, but I lost all respect for Lot then. I'm thinking, what a conniving whoever, that he would do that with his daughters that way. Of course, later on we see the true mettle of the daughters too, so I don't know. But still, it was frustrating to see that. But if you look up cultural practices, you would do anything to protect, especially noble guests that were of nobility or that you thought were prominent or important. You would do everything to sacrifice in order to protect those people because they're under your roof. So now, it's basically what he's saying is that these people are more important than his daughters as far as what he would lose. Get out of our way, they replied. And they said, this fellow came here as an alien, and now he wants to play the judge. So in other words, Lot's an alien. He's not from around here. We'll treat you worse than them. They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. Then they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so they could not find the door. The 2 men said to Lot, do you have anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord, caps to Yahweh, against its people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who were pledged to marry his daughters. He said, hurry and get out of this place, because the Lord is about to destroy the city. But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. Now, of course, I'm trying to relate this to our time because we are told in both Matthew and Luke that the times will be similar. And I'm thinking about how weird we look when we talk about rapture or tribulation or the end of time events. It's for some it makes them, they're curious about it, but for many people they feel like we look foolish for believing such things are true. And I'm thinking that's kind of like here. That's the reception Lot is getting when he says it's going to be destroyed. His sons-in-law just think he's joking. Verse 15, with the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished. When he hesitated, the men grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and of his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. As soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, flee for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains or you will be swept away. Okay, so let's look at the mountains here. So here they're fleeing towards the mountains, towards this way, towards the mountains. And it says here in, what verse am I at?
Just finished something.
17, okay, 18. But Lot said to them, no, my lord, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me and spared my life. But I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me, and I'll die. Look, here is a town near enough to run to, and it is small. Let me flee to it. It is very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared. He said to them, very well, I will grant this request too. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach it. That is why the town is called Zoar. And Zoar means small. So see, it's not very far away. Originally, this whole area was going to be, apparently, this whole area was going to be destroyed. They said, okay, well, you can go to Zoar. You don't have to go all the way to the mountains. Actually, we don't know. When he said flee to the mountains, they may have meant to flee up to these mountains too. So it could be the other direction. It's hard to know from just the text. But some people say that it meant go back up to these mountains. But there were mountains over on this side, and there were mountains down in this area also. And Lot asked to go to Zoar, which means small. It's just a little small town. And apparently that was going to be a part of the destruction from the way the angels responded. Now, if you Google Sodom and Gomorrah, and you can get all kinds of websites that talk about these earthquakes and events. Rob sent me, Debbie, a article on how they think that there might have been a volcanic eruption. Some will say a meteor strikes. There's all kinds of things. What's interesting is if you read it carefully, they have no evidence of any volcano or meteor strike or anything. They just say they have found the destruction. They have found the ashes and the signs of it. And so from that they postulate. And so that's what's so interesting, because God took care of it. He could use a volcano, he could use whatever he wants to use. He's God, right? But when you hear that, when you see those articles, read them carefully and see if they actually have any evidence. And what I found is that they're just saying it because, well, you know, it likely was some volcano we didn't know about, because there was Mount Vesuvius. We know this wasn't Mount Vesuvius, but there could have been one like it. Who knows, you know? But what they have found is the signs of it, the blackened rock, the melted rock like an ash and all of that they found in the area. So it's kind of funny how the interpretation goes there, so you have to read kind of careful. But this area down here in the Salton Sea, there's a water cycle that happens in this area. And up here is Mount Hermon, all the way up. If you look at one of your other maps, you'll see way up at the end of this like divot between the two mountains. Mount Hermon is 10,000 feet. Salton Sea is 3,000. Salton Sea is 1,300 feet below sea level. So you go from 10,000 feet, Mount Hermon, to below sea level, 1,300 feet. This desert region down here gets hot, 120 degrees. It's very much like us. If you were to go to Salton Sea, it'd be kind of like that, a low spot with water in it. Now, what happens in this water cycle is that the desert heat evaporates that water, and that water goes up and gets back up into Mount Hermon, where it comes down as snow and rain, and it flows down through, heats again. There's like this water cycle that goes on in this area between Mount Hermon and this area. Because of that, there's lots of mineral and water deposits down in this Salton Sea area. And if you go down there, I've been told, I haven't seen for myself, that you can see little deposits of salt. Not like Salton Sea, you can see the salt around the land. But it's happened so much there, it's like a regular cycle, that sometimes you'll get little standing, little, what do you call it, pillars of salt, like little, pokey, like places where the salt is accumulated and dripped down. And so they've got all kinds of funny things where, like, you can find a sign that says, the wife of Lot, and there's like a pillar of salt there. Or there's one that has like a face shape, and they'll say the nose of Lot's wife, it looks like a person's nose, coming out. So it's kind of funny, but there are salt and mineral deposits down there, quite a bit of it. Okay, what measure are we on? 22? 23. By the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens, from the Lord, Yahweh, out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, including all those living in the cities, and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. What's the lesson there? A one-sentence lesson.
Should listen carefully.
You know that pre-trib rapture we're talking about? Don't look back. Don't let anything on this earth be holding you down. When it's time to be with God, it's time to be with God. Obedience. Don't look back. Nothing on this earth is more important than being where God has asked for you to be. Nothing. So if there's anything holding you back that you would choose over God, you need to work on that. Deal with that. Talk about it. Figure out what you need to do with that. All right, let me give you an example. I always worry about our dogs. What happens when we get raptured in our dogs?
I bet God's got that figured out.
I have this God who created everything, including my dogs. I figure he knows what he's going to do with the dogs. I mean, I'm thinking I'll leave the food over there so they can dig into the bag, and I'll leave the toilet bowl open so they can get water. But in the end, what I need to do is let God have my dogs. And I need to let God have my husband. And God needs to have my children. And God needs to have my house. In other words, whatever it is that we might find ourselves looking back for.
That's what I was thinking about. His wife, I mean, she probably was really sad. That was her home, all of her belongings. It's really easy to be like, why was she such an idiot? But if it was your life just blowing up,
Even just curiosity of what's going on behind you. I think.
Yeah.
We play with the idea of a rapture. We play with the idea of going to heaven. We use it when we feel fearful. But do we really think about and believe that God is ruler of all, in charge of all, and can take care of it all? Do we really put our trust and our faith in him, where we can actually let go of all those things, including your children, including little Sadie? Right? That's, you have that confidence. You say, God will bring Sadie. So don't reach your hand back to get her. Let God bring Sadie, right? It's that kind of thing, having that faith that we're not looking back, that we're going forward. Okay, what verse am I in now? I'm glad you're keeping track of this one. 27, thank you. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain. He saw dense smoke rising up from the land like smoke from a furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot lived. So here's Abraham went to bed, got up the next morning, looked out and could see the smoke rising from Sodom and Gomorrah. So then he gave Lot a call and said, Lot, are you guys okay? No, you wouldn't know, right? He's just seeing what happened out there. He doesn't know. He'll find out later, because look at verse 30. Lot and his 2 daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. He and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. One day the older daughter said to the younger, Our father's old. There's no man around here to lie with us, as is the custom all over the earth. Let's get our father to drink wine and then lie with him and preserve our family line through our father. Oh, what a brilliant idea. That night they go to their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went in and lay with him. He was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. The next day the older daughter said to the younger, Last night I lay with my father. Let's get him drunk wine again tonight, and you go in and lie with him so we can preserve our family line through our father. So they got their father to drink wine that night also. The younger daughter went and lay with him. Again, he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son, and she named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites of today. The younger daughter also had a son, and she named him Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites today. So we have then the nations forming up. So on this map, I need the bigger map. Oh. If you have an Old Testament map, this is probably good enough. The Moabites end up settling in this area. This is the land of Moab. Up here is the land of Ammon, where the Ammonites settle, and then you have Israel over here. And so later on, when the children of Israel come out of Egypt, remember they have to come up here this way because they're being blocked by the Moabites and the Ammonites and won't let them through. So they have to wander around to get over and through to where they're supposed to go, into the promised land. So, pardon?
Some of them didn't get across.
So Moabites and Ammonites are known for this, being the tribes of this incestuous relationship. What a wonderful reputation to have. If you look at Psalms 108:9.
Just makes me wonder, if they were sneaky enough to get their father drunk, why didn't they just sneak off to the town, back to the town or something? I guess that wouldn't preserve the family line.
I guess not. And Psalm 108, verse 9, this is God speaking, God spoken from a sanctuary in triumph. He's talking about Gilead, Manasseh, Ephraim, Judah, and then in verse 9 he talks about Moab. It says, Moab is my wash basin. Back in the day, the wash basin, this is not the wash basin like the sink. This is the wash basin like the little pot you push under the bed. This is the toilet. So this is saying that Moab is my toilet. Because of this history, the Ammonites and the Moabites were always at odds with Israel. So we have, from this episode in Genesis, we have the Moabites. By the way, the word Moab, if you say it in Hebrew, sounds very similar to the word father in Hebrew. So it's kind of a weird link there. So the Moabites, then Ben-Ami becomes the father of the Ammonites, or the patriarch of the Ammonites. Ishmael, remember, Abraham's first child with the servant from Egypt, Ishmael, becomes the link to the Arab people. And then Isaac, we've talked about, is going to happen in a year from now, would be the beginning of the Israelite people. So we have these nations and cultures at odds with one another, and we're seeing them come about now. So if you will look at the book of Ruth, whoever can get to Ruth first, would you read the first 5 verses of the book of Ruth? Ruth, the first 5 verses.
During the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. A man left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons to stay in the territory of Moab for a while. The man's name was...
Make it up. Elimelech. Elimelech.
And his wife's name was Naomi. The names of his two sons were Mahlon and Shalon. They were Ephraimites from Bethlehem in Judea. They entered the fields of Moab and settled there. Naomi's husband, Elimelech, died, and she was left with her two sons. Her two sons took
Moabite.
Moabite women as their wives. One was named Oprah, and the second was named Ruth. After they lived in Moab about 10 years, both Mahlon and Shalon also died, and Naomi was left without her two children and without her husband.
Okay, so let me read this story a little bit different. What if I tell you the meanings of those names? So the land that they were in was Bethlehem and Judah. Bethlehem means house of bread. Judah means praise. So Elimelech means God is my king, and Naomi is pleasant. So God is my king and pleasant leave the house of bread and praise for Moab, God's toilet. Are you getting the feeling how the story's going to go? Yeah, okay. So God is my king and pleasant leave the house of bread and praise to live in toilet. Moab is not a place you want to go. Mahlon, their son Mahlon's name means puny. And Chilion means sickly. So they have their sons, puny and sickly. And then her husband dies. The two sons take wives. Orpah means fawn. And Ruth means glamour, like a Audrey Hepburn kind of a person. So you've got kind of positive names for Orpah and Ruth. Puny and sickly die. So the husband died, then puny and sickly die. So all that's left is Naomi with her two Moabite daughters. And as you read through Ruth, you'll notice that again and again it says Ruth the Moabitess. That was a big deal that Naomi would come back to the country that she was from with a Moabitess. It was like, oh no, who is that and why are they here? And it was really a bad reputation that they had. Now, had Ruth done anything bad? She was just a part of a people that was considered bad. So do we have that today? Do we have people we consider bad? I was watching a portion of Robin Hood, and the guy that's the friend of Robin Hood was a Moor, and he was kind of blackish looking, and he was really, oh no, you're one of the Moors, like it's like that, right? We have people today. I don't like it when people stink. Like, it's okay to me if you're homeless, but if you stink bad, I have a hard time with people when they smell strong, We have people that would be considered low in our society. A Moabitess would be that kind of person that everyone would stay away from. There would be rumors. It'd be like, ooh, So, in the end, after they go back, in the end, she marries the son. And if you look at Ruth chapter 4, verse 17, in verse 17, verse 16, they get married. Boaz marries Ruth, and they have a child. In verse 16, Naomi took the child, laid him in her lap, and cared for him. And the women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. Now this next part. He was the father of Jesse, who was the father of David. The line of David goes to Christ. What? How'd you let a Moabitess get in there? In the genealogy? Well, Lot didn't seem like such an outstanding person by himself either. I mean, if you want to go back that far. So, what is the lesson to Abraham that God was teaching him through this? He's teaching him about justice and righteousness. Does God judge you based on the fact that you are a Moabitess? No. That's part of this lesson for Abraham on righteousness, on justice. What does God count as righteousness? What does God count as justice? Who does he accept? He has Abraham, for Pete's sake. In the next chapter, Abraham passes off his wife as a sister again. I thought he learned that lesson before, but he's going to do it again. None of these people were perfect. None of these people are more perfect than what we are. So we have this problem that judgment is coming. The time of judgment is coming. We live in forgiveness. We are in the place of forgiveness. By Christ's blood, we are forgiven. But we are expected to live the right kind of life. Are we perfect? No. Just like Abraham, we've been chosen. We're chosen. We chose to be a part of Christ. So Christ has chosen us because we have chosen him. We are like Abraham. We are not perfect, but we're learning and we're growing. And everything that happens to us in life, even watching what happens to to Lot or to somebody else, we're learning from. And just like Abraham, he's not perfect, but God used him to bring Christ, to bring salvation. What was Abraham good at doing? What have we seen that he's good at doing so far? So far, he's been really good at admitting he was wrong.
He's had lots of opportunities.
He has, but there were others that didn't admit they were wrong, that were prideful and went on about their own arrogant ways. But Abraham does seem willing to go, oh yeah, I shouldn't have done that. And he does seem to then choose a right way. He does seem to be a noble character, a person who tries to do what is right and seeks after helping other people too, a person that's interested in Lot and his family and tries to help out. So maybe we could learn those lessons. And we need to remember that the New Testament tells us that from Noah and Lot, not Lot, but Noah and Abraham, from these two stories, that we're supposed to take these as lessons about the second coming of Christ. That as it was in the days of Sodom, as it was in the days of Noah. What were those days? Evil being done all around. Do you often feel like you're the only one trying to do what's right? That's the way they felt. They were the only one doing what's right. Who shut up the boat? God shut the boat. Noah didn't shut the boat. Noah didn't say, okay, it's your last chance. I'm closing the door now. When the time comes, God will shut the door. When the time comes, God will rain down the fire. When that happens, there won't be any negotiating. And you won't know. The people in Noah's time did not know that the next moment was going to be it. Even in Sodom, those people didn't know that was it. That was their last opportunity. We won't know. So there's the urgency with which we need to reach out to the people that we know. That urgency. Any other questions or comments? I'm going to shut this off.